It's like the third time I've tried to do this. Anyway, hello everyone, welcome to Gamed Out. In today's episode of Verified, my series where I take games that are not verified for the Steam Deck and give them a run to see how they play on Valve's handheld console. In this episode this week, we've got a game that takes us to the West. That's Hard West 2, a tactical strategy, turn-based XCOM style game. How does it run on deck? Well, let's find out. As always, thanks to my good buddy over at Nerd Nest who did the animation. That's Bill. Go subscribe to his content. If I remember, I'll leave a link in the description down below for all his stuff. Thank you if you're joining me on the audio feed over at my podcast, Gamed Out. This is available on YouTube if you're listening, or if you're watching, you can listen to my voice by following the links down below. So yes, as I said, we're here to discuss Hard West, or Hard West 2, no doubt. Now, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I'm either going to edit this with interjecting footage, or I'm going to try something different for next week's show. So bear with me. We'll try it this way for this week, and then we'll interject. I'll do something different, and we'll see what works for people. But anyway, thanks everyone who watched the F1 Manager verified video. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And everyone who has subscribed to the channel recently, since doing the Steam Deck content, it's given me a new lease of life here on YouTube. Again, sorry if it doesn't look like I'm talking to you. I am talking to you in the camera, but I do this because of how my setup. Anyway, enough babbling. What I wanted to do was, as I said, discuss Hard West. I want to discuss. Sorry, I was unlocking my iPad. I want to discuss Hard West and how it runs on Steam Deck. The whole point of this series is to give you an idea of what unsupported games are like on Steam Deck. Verified games, I've got something else planned for next week, so bear with me. But this is all for the unsupported, the unverified. Remember, I'm not looking at games like Destiny 2 or Dead by Daylight. They don't work because of anti-cheat software. This is a game that doesn't have any of that, but does work on Steam Deck to some capacity. And what I've done this week is I spent some time sort of thinking off the back of last week's episode, which I think is not a bad thing to try and continuously improve. And I'm going to break this down into sections. And if I remember and know how to, down below will be timestamped of each section. So if there's a section in particular that you want to hear me waffle on about, then you can head down in the description below and you can, the timestamps below, and you can find where you want to hear about that certain game. We're not just going to do new games, we're going to do old games that are in my catalogue, because you might be thinking of picking them up. Whatever, the Steam Deck catalogue is vast, as Valve told us, over 5,000 playable games, but there are many unsupported categories out there, or unsupported games, I should say, that are for the taking to look into. So if you've got any unsupported games you'd like me to look at, and if I own them, I'll give them a go. So the categories for Verified are as follows. Background. So there's a bit of background about my experience with these type of games, along where the footage I've recorded it from. We've got install size on deck, so I'll talk about the actual install size. So for you 64 gig deck owners, you'll know if this is, whether this is something you should be, especially if you haven't got an SD card, whether you should be installing it or not. I'll then explain where this footage is captured or is recorded off, what part of my Steam Deck. Compatibility will be all about how I got it up and running, how it just kind of like works. Does it work out of the box? Did I have to do anything in particular? All those kind of things in the compatibility section. Then we have graphics performance, and battery life is included in that. Any stuff that I had to do to extend the battery life, all those good things. I noticed that I've got no bullet points under that, so I guess I was lazy and didn't do that part of my job. And then controls, I'll talk about if I had to use a different layout, all that kind of stuff. And then, which is what I feel overtook the last video, was a first impressions. Give you my kind of initial instinct of what that game is like, and whether I'll be continue to play it on deck, or whether it's a PC game that should be played on the PC instead of, or whatever platform it's available. So that's how Verified will work. Hopefully you enjoy it. Hopefully it gives you some comfort. If it does, I'd appreciate a like. If it does some good, I'd appreciate a subscription. Anyway, over to The first section, which I said was backgrounds. Background with these is I do love these type of games. Hard West 2, for anybody, is a like isometric view, tactical, turn-based strategy game. If you think of XCOM, but this has got cowboys and horror and magic from the enemies. I don't know if you get magic. We'll talk about the systems and stuff later in the first impressions. But it's all got those sort of things. And it's all done grid-based system. You have action points, all that kind of stuff. And all the footage that you're going to see interjected over the top of this video is recorded. And I'll do the same as I did last week. Is I will say if it's recorded on deck or on PC or however. I like to put the PC stuff in there so you can see what the PC footage looks like. Remember, I am running a AMD Ryzen 5 56, I think. I need to check that. And an AMD 6800 graphics cards, 32 gigs of RAM. It'll be off a M.2 Gen 4 SSD. That's where it's installed, so that footage, and then the deck stuff and all that. But yeah, I've got a bit of a love, a bit of fascination. I go through stages with these types of games where I will just want to play games like this, Wasteland, XCOM 2, trying to think of other ones. There's a Warhammer one, Chaos something, which is unsupported on deck, so that's coming up as well. These games are great. They make your brain think. They're almost like puzzle games inside of a bit more of a style of game, but it's a lot of fun. The install size, if you like, on this is around 30 gigs. It's a big game. It's chunky. I don't understand the install of the pre-shaders on the deck stuff. I don't get that. And it looks like my internal SSD, which is the 256 gig one, is just being bombed with these internal shaders all the time when I install a new game. Hopefully that's just a one and done. If I uninstall a game and then reinstall that game, hopefully it remembers which internal shaders it's actually installed in the past. So I'd love a comment down below what all that shader stuff is. I'm guessing it's graphic stuff to do with the Proton. Don't know. I'm not a Linux head. But yes, it's around 30 gig. I think it was 32 gig this came in at. And it was installed on my micro SD card, which is a Samsung Evo 2 512 gig. So that's what that is. That's where it's installed. Running wise and loading times, the loading times are quite slow in an initial boot up, especially off the micro SD card. I haven't tried it off the SSD, but it was quite slow. And I do wonder if that's to do with something that I'll discuss in compatibility, which is next in the show. But there was definitely a issue with load times. This game really did like to take its sweet time getting up and running. But once it got running, it was fine. I didn't notice it being on a micro SD card or anything like that. That's one of the great things about the Steam Deck is that actually you can install a game on your micro SD card and not really know that it was running off a micro SD card. Just your load times might be slightly slower, but I haven't, and maybe in future videos I'll do a comparison, uninstall, reinstall, and go from there. But it seemed to work. There wasn't many hiccups installing it, which is really funny for these unsupported games where you dump it onto your deck, which says unsupported, but they'll boot up or they'll install fine. You would think Valve would have I'm glad they don't. I'm not recommending this, Valve, so please don't take a note of this. But you would think, or you would have thought they'd had a system in place that no unsupported games can be installed on deck. Then it would just be it would be pointless for people who like to tinker with these things. But yeah, so that's the background of it. That's the install size. Let's talk compatibility, because I think these next kind of 3 sections are where people are really going to be interested in what's what. So compatibility was interesting. Out of the box, this game does work. I think I was running it on... No, sorry, my mistake. My deck was set up to Proton Experimental, and this game was crashing. I couldn't get past the loading screen. I thought this was going to be a very short episode of Verified this week. Couldn't get past the loading screen. Splash screen for Hard West 2 would come up, then it would crash, and it would just boot back out. Had a look on Proton DB, got some tips, and changed to Proton 7.04, and it worked. But there was a bug with the cutscenes. Interestingly, I had to YouTube a part of the game that I got to, and I was like, I could hear voices, but I couldn't actually see a cutscene. I was like, well, is this part of the game? Am I supposed to have a cutscene here, or is this like happening in one of the person's head? Is that what's going on? But no, when I YouTubed a section that I was on, there was actually a cutscene. And I was like, oh, so I've not seen, and I had not seen any of the cutscenes to date, so I had to go back to YouTube to see these cutscenes, which was hilarious because I was like, well, maybe the developers didn't do cutscenes. I don't know. But they had done, and they're really, really good looking cutscenes. They remind me of Battle Chasers Night War. But yeah, interestingly, I was like, well, where are the cutscenes? And then went back onto Proton DB, and they were all saying about Proton Glorious Egg Roll, or GE. I don't know why it's called Glorious Egg Roll. I'll never understand why people name stuff that they do, but there you go. And to get that was a bit of an experience. And if I remember correctly, what I'll do is I'll overlay at this point, I'll interject the footage of me installing on deck. There's a program you can find in the Discovery store, if you like, on the desktop mode on the Steam Deck. For those who don't know, the Steam Deck comes with desktop mode. It makes it into pretty much a PC with a Linux-based operating system, and you can do all of the PC-style things. If you want to connect a keyboard and mouse and use it as a PC, you can. There is no stopping you. So yeah, you drop into desktop mode, you go over to the Discovery Store and you search Proton Up-QT. There's some really good videos about what this stuff is, or what this program does. And Brian Gardner, I think his name is the chap that I followed to understand what. I still don't get it. I still don't understand it. It's like magic. There's some tomfoolery going on in this system. I don't get it. And what it allows you to do is allows you to install different versions of Proton that I'm guessing the community around us have worked on, made, whatever. Linux is open source, and my guessing is this is what they've done. So I installed the Proton and then got, I think it was GE 6.0 something, 8 GE. And then what happens is once you install that onto desktop mode, you exit Steam in desktop mode, reopen Steam, and then it gives you in the compatibility area of the game the ability to basically play it in a different version of Proton. And when I booted it back up, all the cutscenes were there. Everything worked. It was great. It was glorious, and it was glorious egg roll. There you go. And it was almost like, there's a parallel sort of this unparalleled match of tinkering that goes on in getting a game working. When it works, it's great. And Proton DB, incredible. And there's some incredible Linux like gamers and people who have used Linux for years over Microsoft Windows or whatever. That just really helps the fact that actually that I'm glad that was there, because I thought this game was going to be a bust. Compatibility wise, I didn't think we were going to have a really raving kind of discussion about the compatibility of Hardware 2. So once I got all that installed, everything worked, all good. So that is my recommendation. If I remember correctly, I will drop in a description of which Proton version I'm using for Hardware 2. I have now subsequently uninstalled Hardware 2 because of the space-wise, because I'm doing this series, so I'm installing different games all the time and testing them out, recording footage, and some of them, in the first impressions, I will mention if this game will reach my backlog for me to play. But yeah, compatibility-wise, going back to that, it works. That's probably the best way to describe it. It does work. It does what it says on the tin. Do have to bit of tomfoolery to get it going. Once you get it going, no problems. Cutscenes work, sounds works, all good. Graphics, performance, and battery life is going to be where I think this game really does. It's going to be kind of like where people want to play this game on deck or not. Graphically, on PC, this game is stunning. That's as simple as that. It's a really good looking game, and I like the look of it. On Steam Deck, not so much. But if I'm comparing my experience of playing Hard West, if you like, on Nintendo Switch to what I'm experiencing on Steam Deck, miles apart. It's unfair to compare this PC, the Steam Deck, to my PC, and I won't do that. I will just tell you that it looks better on PC because my PC has more horsepower. Simple as that. This game will look better on Steam Deck than it does if it was on another handheld. That is the truth. So if you're coming from like a Nintendo Switch, or you're coming from an Aya Neo or something like that, my guessing is this is going to be a better experience graphically than what you would find on other systems. This game isn't available on other handheld systems, or it's available or probably if you want to install it on the Aya Neo and stuff. And I can't confirm graphically if it's an improvement against the Steam Deck, but for what it is, perfectly fine. It does the job. It services a purpose. The shadows are all there. You do have to turn the graphics down, or I found turning the graphics down. Now, you can crank this up, and it will run around 30 to 40 FPS, but it will eat into the battery life. So I found this happy medium of kind of ignoring what the graphics look like, if you like, because this kind of game, you are playing for the gameplay. You are playing to be able to enjoy that really good tactical gameplay. So graphically, it's not really a problem, as long as the gameplay is good. You know, that's the main thing. But performance-wise, I managed to get it at quite a level 40 FPS. Sometimes it would drop depending on what's on screen, but with the performance, I can't remember what the options are, but I did limit the TDP down to around about 8 or 10 watts. And this was mainly for battery saving. I think I managed to get it up to about 3.5 hours on the battery. Which again, it might be between 3.5 hours is what I think I got. And I forgot to write these notes down, so I am thinking off the top of my head. And I've got footage playing currently, and it's trying to remember if I actually captured the battery. And I did. So there's on the screen, you can't see it, but I've got some of the footage playing here. For those who are listening on one of my external, on my other monitors, I've got the footage playing, and it's running well. It was at 40 FPS, and I'm just trying to find the battery's at 97% at the time, but this was, I believe, on charge, so it doesn't actually have a battery life. I just scrubbed through some footage on my phone that I took directly from the Steam Deck. Actually, I lied. It was around 2 hours. I think I got 2 to 2.5 hours, and that was adjusting things, like I said, the TDP. Needed to adjust that and adjust the wattage of the graphics cards, if you like, the CPU. Sorry, I do try and limit the graphics cards, if you like, and it just tanks the game performance. I suppose in like a 16-bit game, it isn't going to hurt too much, but most of the 16-bit games that I've played on Steam Deck, I get like 5, 6, 7. I'm playing one game at the minute, I'm getting 7+ hours, which is great. But this is 2 hours, just over the 2 hours mark. Whether I can squeeze anything out of that, I'm not sure. There is an option there's like another option, it's like half shaders or something, and I can't quite remember what that does. But again, it was much the same thing. Everything I tried, half rate shadings, which in one game, and it wasn't Hard West, I couldn't really notice the difference, but in Hard West, sorry. Do not put half rate shadings on because you can't read any of the writing in the game. It blurs all of that stuff out and it makes the game look terrible. I know it's there to design to help with battery life, but don't do it in this game. It looks absolutely jank. It just looks horrible. As simple as that. So battery life wise was a strange experience. You're going to get to maybe 2.5 hours. Apologise, not 3.5 hours. There may have been a point where I got 3.5 hours, but I don't think there was. It definitely is a heavy game on graphic. And I think the kind of thing that you have to weigh up when you're playing one of these types of games, anything, not just Hard West 2, but anything where you're looking at the 2.5 hour mark, is that kind of worth it? Yes, it is, because you can play it on the move, how much have I got to reduce that down to get the extra minutes of the battery, if you like? Is it worth it, or do you just play it at the best possible sort of frame rate and the best possible performance for the couple of hours that you're allowed? The Steam Deck does not have great battery life when you start chucking high fidelity looking games with a lot of stuff to render on screen. Now, admittedly, in my next video, I'm going to start doing a bit more in the game settings, because I didn't do a lot. I don't, off the top of my head, in this game. I did turn some of the shadows down. I turned it to a sort of a medium setting, but I want to see if that plays an effect on battery life on the Steam Deck. So, yeah, that was the graphics, performance, and the battery. Overall, it runs absolutely fine. You will know you're playing it on Steam Deck because the frame rate is less than a normal PC. Graphically, it looks good. There is, it's a good looking game on a handheld. It does do the job, and when you're playing on the small screen, I don't think you can really notice too much, which isn't a bad thing. So yeah, it's definitely a game that looks fine, plays fine. Just got to do some bits and pieces with regards to the battery to try and eke out as much performance as possible. Controls is a funny one because this is a traditional tactical game. You're using WASD to move the camera around, and then you're using a mouse to select stuff. It's not a great experience when it's just out of the box. The standard WSAD controller setup that it picks for you is not a lot of fun. I honestly can't really remember what the buttons were they were assigned. And I had to download a couple of community schemes, and there was one that I settled on for this one, which actually made a lot more sense. It turned the D-pad button into selecting the characters, which is usually tab. It brought into play the rear buttons to allow you to, pick their actions and stuff like that. It made the A button the accept button, which is kind of a big thing. What I'm saying is there is not an official layout Steam Deck support for this game. When I do future tactical games down the line, especially if one's verified, so Divinity Original Sin 2, for example, is verified, I'd be interested to see what that controller scheme is done by Larian, and maybe we can take that as a template and move that over to games like this. Essentially, they're the same system or same type of game, if that makes sense. The game itself is quite reliant on keyboard and mouse. And the Steam Deck does okay in translating that, but I think you have to spend some time definitely here if you want to find a comfortable way of playing this game. You do need that. You'll need to spend time tweaking the controls and doing this and doing that to get it to a comfortable state. As I said, had to download a community one. There was one better than the other. If I remember what it is, I'll link it down. I connected my mouse and a Bluetooth keyboard. Worked fine, and it worked as intended. And that's where the true kind of comfortableness, if that's a word, comes for playing this game. First impressions of the game is it's good. It's really good. It's a lot of fun. You have, as I say, you have action points to carry out certain things that include move, attacking, defending. You can defend on yourself behind cover, full cover, half cover, all comes into play. It's got that classic XCOM, I'm going to fire at 75%, but in the back of your head, there's a possibility that's going to miss. It has a cool system with certain guns. At the minute, I've only seen the revolvers to be able to do this, where you can shoot off metal objects. So you can have an enemy round a corner, but you can fire off 2 barrels to hit them. It's kind of a cool mechanic. Really like that. Really dig that. As I said, it's got like a supernatural horror vibe to it. The premise of the story at the beginning, you meet the devil and he essentially takes your soul by the looks of it, and you're on a hunt to go kill the devil. That's what it looks like is going to happen. I think there's a lot of good character interaction within this game. It looks like you can have different characters, your party, at different levels of like what they'll do and how you can support them and the different bits in interactions. I suppose there'll be further skills unlocked depending on how friendly you are with certain people in your party. It's cowboys meets horror, ghosts and goblins and all that kind of stuff. So overall, the premise is really cool. The game looks great, plays great. I haven't understood this deck of card system yet, but it looks like it's like a perk system. You get these deck of cards and you can put them into a hand, which I'm guessing if you get like a poker style hand, like a flush or a 4 of a kind or a straight run, you're going to get bonuses. So I need to unlock a few more cards to really get that. Once you've done the tutorial area, which is on this ghost train, really freaky kind of part of the game, you go into this map where you're exploring and you go to different towns, get caught into fights and different bits and pieces. I'm very early on in the game. I've only unlocked the card system, unlocked a few characters, and so on. So my impressions are quite low. Not low in a bad way, but because I haven't done a lot of the game, that's where they are. That's the whole point of this video. It's not to give you a full-blown, this is what the game is. It's to give you an idea of whether you want to run this on Steam Deck. Will I be playing this on Steam Deck? No. That's as simple as that. It's not a comfortable experience for me on Steam Deck. I think, unless I can copy the Divinity Original Sin 2 controller layout, I don't think it's a great experience. As I said in the controls, the style of game that this is, I don't think the controls yet, or there isn't a community version that really tends itself. I'm not a big trackpad fan, and you're having to use the trackpad or the right analog stick to move the cursor and do bits and pieces like that. This is definitely on my backlog, but it'll be played through on the PC. I think it's not currently, in its current state, not a great pick for the deck. There you go. That is verified. If you enjoyed the video, please do leave a comment, subscribe and like. Let me know if you've tried Hard West on the deck, because I'd love to know your thoughts and feelings about this game, because my thoughts and feelings could be completely wrong, and you may have a better opinion at this than I do. Remember, we all have opinions. Just keep it civil. That's all I ask. You can follow me at ThatChapZap. You can contact the show if you just jump down below. There's an email address. Got any ideas, or you can hit me up on Twitter of games that are unsupported for the Verified series. Remember, the Verified videos come out once a week on a Monday. Gives me time to play games. New videos every Monday and Friday going forward. I'll try and re-upload the Gamed Out podcast that I did. Until next time, guys, thank you very much for joining me, and have a great day. Bye-bye.